hand straight over to Greg, actually, because you've done all my bit for me, Alison. But just to say, I'm going to take, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. So if you've got any questions along the way for Greg, type them into the chat for me so that we don't break his flow. And I'll interrupt him if I think the question can't wait. Okay. So Greg, over to you.
Okay, I can't see where to share, so I've just forwarded it to Alison in case.
It's just, if you can't see it, Greg, it just down at the bottom of your screen, you should see the share screen, little green up arrow. Yeah,
that's what I was. I've got share content, but I can't see.
Don't worry. If you send it to me, and I'll do your slide advancing for you. So if you sent it to Alison, I'll pick it up now.
You got it?
Hang on, wait, bear with me. Yeah, got it.
Might be easier.
Yeah, not a problem. Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll just yes, as Alison said, I've been working at Lakeside really since we opened a year ago, and before that, I was part of a small team that were at the airport doing the flu vaccinations before. So we've seen a lot of changes, a lot of things going on over that period of time. I'm pleased to say there's still quite a core of that original team that are involved. So it's a great thing to be part of, and I'm sure you'll enjoy your time.
I think I'm sharing.
It's thinking about it.
Okay.
We've just got a blank screen at the moment, Cole.
Yeah, it says your screen sharing is paused. I'll stop that and try again. Love technology. Let's try a different way.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, well, we don't need, if we go to the next slide, this is far less formal than it might look, but it just helps me to structure everything. These are slides that were shared with us from the primary care network, and I've updated them for this purpose, so hopefully you'll find them useful. I'm sure Colin can distribute them afterwards. So these are the bullet points we'll go through. If we go to the next slide, Colin. So this is a site map. Apologies to those that may already have done a shift or have visited previously, so know it well enough, but I thought it was just useful just to highlight a few key points. So the first thing is obviously from an access point of view, you come in via the top of this picture round to where the red star is. That's the access point onto the site for all arrivees, and we would emphasize to everybody, please don't be tempted, even if there's a queue, to come in via the exit, because we have had some near misses with people exiting. So that's the key point. And then what you'll do is make your way round to the left, round to that, you can see the staff and volunteer parking, just park there, and then come in via, you can see the patient exit point, which Colin is now pointing to, and then come into that point, and you'll come into the main office area for the start of every shift. The other key points for this is that the vast majority of the parking is available for patients. We have had that pretty full at times when queues have been difficult, but hopefully that won't be the case. Usually we're using about half that car park. I'm showing here the car park volunteers. We have anywhere between 2 and 4 volunteers on at any one time, dependent on the patient numbers. You can see also we tend to, if you're on the car park, we tend to move the large vehicles up towards that area away from the front of the building, because the parking spaces are fairly tight, especially if people don't park centrally. And then there is a one-way exit down the bottom there, up through and out at night. That has been quite challenging in the past with the lighting once the dark nights have set in, but there is new flood lighting, so that's made it a lot easier. You can see the two doors, door 1 and 2. Usually we only have one door open, but if you hear the term double flow, that's when we will have two doors open. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in terms of how that works.
In fact, Greg, it's all double flow up until New Year's Day.
Right. Okay.
Because of the target we're trying to reach.
Yeah. Okay. So we will be guiding people into the two doors, exactly the same for any patient. Doesn't matter which one they go in, and it doesn't matter what their time of arrival is. Once they're on site, it's first come, first serve. But as it stands, it's all via appointment. There's no walk-ins at present, right, Colin?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So it should make it easier. So that gives you an overview of the site. If we go to the next slide, just these are really for you just to recognise names. The overall programme is managed by Dr. Mark Pudsley and Edmund Cartwright, who set this all up in the very beginning quite some time ago. They're members of the senior team at the Primary Care Network. Nikki Orchard is the senior site manager, so she has the overall day-to-day operational responsibility, and there are 4 site managers. Any one of those 5 could be on for the shifts that you're on. We will let you know who that is during the briefing huddle. They've all been around for quite some time, so they know the roles well. They are then responsible for all clinical and admin staff on site and all volunteers on site, although there is a lead role appointed that's just really a coordination point between that site manager and the volunteers as a whole. If we go to the next slide. So there is a duty GP on site always, and they are responsible for any clinical decisions and for patient safety and vaccines. So clinically, they take the lead and need to be, we need to be aware of who those are. If there is a medical emergency on site, then just shout for clinical support and they will come to you. The senior site manager has the overall site operations responsibility. So everything to do with health and safety, experience with for the patients, any changes necessary in terms of arrangements on the site, the flow and so on. We need to do that in collaboration with them. It's their overall responsibility. And they then also obviously coordinate the workforce, being the site managers, the vaccinators and the volunteers. The site managers then, that's the senior, that's Nikki's role, has overall workforce responsibility. On the day during the shift, obviously the site manager deputises for them and they're responsible for the efficient running during that shift. Okay, so if we go to the next slide.
Actually, it's probably worth saying at this stage, Greg, that obviously there's a number of regulations and rules to follow for the site, yeah. And it's extremely well run. Anyone that's had their vaccinations there will have experienced how well run it is. Despite all that, it is actually a fun place to work, and yeah, hopefully you'll see that. Yeah. Next slide.
So this is probably the important one for you guys. So there is a lead marshal appointed. They are there to facilitate and support the site manager, but also to support you as volunteers and coordinate things. Okay. They're not there to be the big boss. They are there to really be a conduit to the clinical teams and support you where you need assistance. They will coordinate the volunteer briefing. We like to call it a huddle, and that is done first thing at the beginning of shifts. I'll come back to that later. And they may also ask the site manager or GP to join. We have had experiences where changes for various reasons have happened even daily. And so that can be quite challenging for volunteers to understand what they thought was the way to do things one day might not be the same later on. Things are always evolving. So we may ask the site manager to join us just to update everybody on the day. But usually they will update the lead, who will then pass that on during the huddle. The lead is responsible for coordinating and supporting the volunteers during their shift and liaises with, as I say, the site manager on any questions that may arise from patients or yourselves, but also make necessary adjustments due to any patient or staff numbers. So again, things can be quite dynamic. Sometimes it could be a very quiet day. I don't think that's going to be the case for the next couple of weeks. But it also might be that we could almost be overwhelmed with a number of patients. And sometimes we need to tweak things, make changes in conjunction with the site lead. So please make sure that you're as flexible as possible. And it may be that the lead will ask you to change your role or adapt your role in order to accommodate those situations. And we would appreciate your cooperation there. Probably not for the slide, but I would say there are a number of leads. They do have different styles. So please just go with the flow and accommodate that. And just bear in mind, we're here to support the patients. In terms of your roles, as you're aware, there are a number of different positions per shift. They may vary in terms of the number on a shift, depending on how much, whether it be a single flow, double flow, whether there might be flu involved in that shift. So things will change. But essentially, the core roles are between 2 and 4 volunteers in the car park. That will change dependent on volumes, flows, and also nighttime. We tend to have an extra to just assist. 2 or 4 on the entrance. So with a double flow, it will be, there's 2 per door, and they usually, one is sanitizing hands and taking temperatures. The other is logging people in via the iPad, and it's good to switch that around. If we have a double flow, there is a flow person that's then to coordinate and make sure that patients are getting into the right lanes and so on. And that's quite a crucial role there. Patient escorts, there'll be, again, 2 or 4, 2 per lane of vaccinators available, and then observation 1 or 2. And sometimes we have somebody on the exit. Just depends on whether that's necessary or not. But
yeah,
it does help.
I've dropped the exit at the moment, Greg,
right, okay.
Because it was mostly there for nighttime. We've improved the lighting, and also for the sort of older cohort, which we're not seeing so much of now. So I don't think we'll be needing it.
At this time, we'll need that. Okay. So again, just to reiterate there, please be flexible. Patient and volunteer numbers may we need to adapt. That's a really key point. Okay, next slide, sorry. Okay, so if you have not yet started your first shift, just some reminders, please ensure that you take a lateral flow test before this and any shift, just to assure yourselves and also the site manager that you're safe. And also, please, on your first shift, bring with you the signed confidentiality forms that VSNS would have forwarded to you. They are important so that they can be logged with the site manager. Please arrive a good 30 minutes before your shift on the first one. We just need to help with your internal orientation through the building, and the lead will provide you with a vest and a badge, so that you're all set for your shift. We like to have a badge just with your first name on. That kind of helps, it's easy for patients to refer to you, and it just helps the friendliness overall. And then when you do arrive, park in the staff car park and come via the patient exit door, as I showed you on the map. Therefore, then for all shifts, please remember you will get reminders via 3 rings. but please remember to make sure that you have your lateral flow before you arrive, or at least do one every twice a week. If you need to cancel your shift, please obviously give as much notice as possible to the shift lead. But you can also, if you are aware a few days before, on the app 3 Rings, you can actually put your shift up for a switch. You can't actually cancel yourself out, but you can put it for a shift for a switch, and somebody can then take that.
Just add to that, Greg. Some people mistake that for thinking that they're actually putting themselves up to swap, and so they have to take somebody else's shift. It's not. It says something like allow another volunteer to swap in, and it's just basically you're saying, I can't make that shift. Can somebody else take it, please? And say always do that. But if it's very short notice, like 48 hours prior to the event, please also contact whoever the lead marshal is, and send an email to Alison so that we can swap somebody else in good time.
Yeah, you can send the emails via 3 Rings within the system. I saw there was a question there about lateral flow test evidence. No, we're taking it on trust that all volunteers are responsible for their own checking, and so there's no need to provide any evidence beforehand. Please, I've already mentioned that about the exit. Please leave any valuables, if possible, in the car. There is somewhere to leave them, but we just don't want to tempt fate. Just take in the minimum you need whilst you're on your shift. So water, a cup. Please wear the blue medical grade masks at all times. We wear them in the car parks as well, just really as assurance for patients. If you're leaning somewhat into the car, it can be unnerving. So we'd rather you have a mask on the whole of the time. It's just, again, just for patient comfort. They are available free of charge in the huddle room. So just grab, a half a dozen at a time. And if you're on a 4-hour shift, it's good practice to replace your mask at least once, or if they get wet, obviously in the cold months, they can, that's more likely. So, don't be afraid to replace your mask, 2 or 3 times if you need to. Please bring suitable clothing. Not everybody wants to do a car park shift, but the more that are flexible enough to do that, if we need to for any reason, just make sure you've got various layers of clothes for any role. It is worth saying, if you're on entrance, it can be pretty chilly. So you may well want to wear your overcoat on the entrance as well, because you're obviously in the open doors. Next slide. Just
one moment, Greg. Did you say about the closed lid mugs? It sounds a bit...
yeah. We've had a situation where, unfortunately, an open mug of coffee got spilt on a laptop. It wasn't a volunteer, but it's led to a request that in the building you must have a cup that is spill proof. Obviously not in the car park. The leads will generally try and make sure that they provide give everybody a drink using their mug during the shift, but equally you're all freely available to go and get yourselves a drink. Just make sure you notify other volunteers and the lead will step in and cover your position if necessary. But yeah, if you could please bring a closed lid mug with you, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, and 2 questions here, Greg. Do we have LFTs on site that people can take home?
They are only there for staff, so you are expected, given that they are still available free. I'm aware that there are some availability issues at the present time, but if you could order them via the NHS or your pharmacy, please, that would be appreciated.
I guess
if for any reason, sorry.
You're probably just about to say, I'm guessing if for any reason they haven't managed to get hold of an LFT, they can come to their shift early and take the LFT there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Just get there a little earlier. We were able to do that initially in the early days because they weren't free at the time, but now that they're freely available for individuals, that's the preferred option. But absolutely, in an emergency, feel free, come in 10-15 minutes earlier and take a test.
Mm-hmm. And one other question, which I think is for you, Alison. What do we do with the honorary contract form? Can't say I'm familiar with that one, but
they have to. Can everybody bring that along to the first shift and signed copy? And if you haven't got a printer, I think there are copies available on site.
So is that additional to the confidentiality form,
No,
or is that
that's the same thing.
That's the same thing. Okay. Alrighty.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just we used to fill in 2 forms, but I think it's only 1 now, Alison, right?
Just check with the if there's an issue, just check with the staff on site when you arrive with that one.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yeah, hang on a minute. It's not doing it. I'm pressing something. I got something popping up in front of me. Is that it? There we go.
Okay. So this is just something that we've been asked by the senior site lead. So if there are any major issues, they must be reported to the senior site or site manager. Any accidents or concerns, please make sure that they are reported. That's essential. Any questions that you might have or ideas, very often when you get new people on site, they think they can see things where things might be done better or issues. Please don't take the initiative and do make changes yourselves. Please flag them via the lead or directly to the site manager if you feel that's necessary. That's quite an important point. Equally, please don't question what the vaccinators may be doing. We're not responsible for what their roles. That is the duty of the site manager. If you are concerned about something, then just flag it to the site manager and let them deal with it, or to the GP. Any patient issues, please, any queries that are non-clinical, please make sure they go via the lead. He or she will then escalate it to the duty site manager. If there's any queries, if there's any agitation or pushback from patients, please step away from that. You are not there to get involved in any conflicts. It's very rare, but we do sometimes, people are very anxious. Some people are very worried. And you might get somebody that is perhaps a little pushy. Please just step back from that, ask them to wait, call in the lead marshal, and if they can't deal with it, they'll then escalate it to the site manager. There is zero tolerance for any patient aggression, and they will be asked via the site manager to leave if they get to that point. But that's their judgment, not ours. Okay. If you've got any queries or problems, again, please raise it with the lead marshal. If they're not sure how to deal with it, they will pass it on to the site managers. But as I said, you are free. Don't feel that you can only go via the lead marshal. You're quite at liberty to speak directly to the site manager if it's appropriate for whatever the issue is. Okay. Remember, we are a team. We like to project ourselves as a team, and in fact, it's one of the real positives we've had a lot of patient feedback on about how impressed they are with how everybody on the site works together, and that's what we want to obviously maintain. Next slide.
And sorry, Greg, just to add to your point about dealing with any conflict, that's not what the volunteers are there for. No. So hand it as soon as possible over to someone who gets paid to do that kind of thing. Yeah.
I should have mentioned, actually, there is a security guard on site as well. So again, you can just shout security and they will come and intervene if there's any real problems.
Not that we get a lot. Don't want to worry people. I've got a couple of questions. Sorry, Alison, back to this honorary contract. Apparently, the volunteers are receiving both an honorary contract and a confidentiality form,
yeah.
two separate forms.
I'll check up on that one, and I'll send it out in an email just to confirm what you have to do with that.
Okay,
right. I think that's the second one we had, and I think it's. I still don't quite understand why it was required, but I believe the site is covered by the I've forgotten what they're called now, but it's one of the local community teams, the out of hours team, and they asked for it to be signed. I think it's worth just checking on that, whether it's still relevant, Alison, as you say. But those are the two forms we had from the very beginning.
Okay, and this is something you mentioned earlier, so we'll just come back to that. If somebody's taken the entrance role, part of that role, there's two people on each entrance, and one of them will be in charge of the iPad. So question here is, will they get time to get trained on the iPad? So that will be part of their induction, will it, Greg?
Yes, usually we try and make sure that sort of somebody who's had experience with the iPad, it's not difficult, but we usually make sure somebody's got that, and then during the shift they can train and show the other individual. But otherwise there will be time beforehand. Obviously, with so many new volunteers, which is great, it's potentially we might have two on the same shift. So yes, that will be part of the orientation that the lead will provide at the start of your shift.
Okay, next slide.
Yep. Okay, so some little do's and don'ts that are quite important. Some of these are duplicated, but it's just really to emphasize the points. So, we are there to give a warm and friendly welcome. It's also that we're also there to, enjoy the experience ourselves as well. So, please don't get too anxious. It is a fun role. It's an enjoyable place to be. It does get frantic at times, but as I say, you're not there to be anxious at all. If you're concerned, then just shout. We're there really to ease the anxieties and support patients. Be aware that some of them are very anxious, whether they be needle phobic. We have a system, if you're on entrance, if it's obvious that a patient arrives with real concerns, and they may even flag that themselves, we've got a system where they can be given a green card, which is available to you. If you just give that to them, it just means that any volunteer or clinician on site will be aware of that anxiety, and that would be taken into account. If they're an extreme case, then flag to the lead, and we can fast track them through. There is a couple of enclosed tents that we can take them into for their injections, and they can take a little bit more time over it rather than being in the open area. But again, any issues like that or concerns, please just flag them to the lead. Please act professionally. You are there representing the NHS. So, things like any sort of, well, we'll come on to that later, actually. So yeah, please bear that in mind. But as I said earlier, please go with the flow. It can be quite challenging. The lead role can be stressful at times. So, if they ask you to do something and it's perhaps not in quite the friendly manner you might expect, it's probably just that they're anxious, trying to make sure things get done, and they can support the lead. So just go with the flow and be as flexible as possible. Recognise that we don't always get it right. That's the whole, not just the volunteers, but obviously, there may be errors that are surfaced, and we just need to apologise to patients. And just reassure them that good intentions are there, and we will accommodate any problems and resolve them as quickly as possible. Again, take your lateral flow tests if possible, certainly twice a week. In terms of the please don'ts, don't make assumptions, don't make changes unless you've checked with either or the lead or site manager. Seek to address issues with clinical. Please don't address anything with the clinical staff. They're not our responsibility. We're there simply to support the patients. Flag it to the lead or the site manager, and they will ensure that they're addressed. Please, we've had one or two occasions where patients have overheard, you know, if volunteers have become frustrated around certain things, please keep that to yourself or flag it quietly to the lead. Don't express any negative opinions in front of patients or staff, and certainly don't get into any disagreements or arguments amongst ourselves. Again, remain professional throughout and flag things quietly on the side, and avoid making, you know, we are there to have a bit of fun as well and make it fun for the patients as best as possible. But, you know, there is a line, and just be wary of being appropriate and don't, you know, certainly go into a situation where you might embarrass staff or patients. Okay, it's actually quite simple. Please, you know, take these as read and just bear them in mind as you go about your shift. Okay, and I think there may be one more, which is questions. If there's any further questions that haven't been asked earlier, either on the chat, Colin, or if we want to open it up for questions, that would be good.
I think we'll open up for questions. There's none that we haven't covered on the chat, other than another point about the contract, which Alison's going to look into.
Okay.
So anybody have anything they want to ask?
Do you want to go back to the screen and just...
Yeah, let me stop sharing now.
You can see everybody.
All right.
If you want to, if you know how to put your hand up either visually or via the Zoom, then feel free. I've explained it all.
I think you might have done, Greg. Yeah.
Anybody have any concerns or worries?
I haven't been able to print off any forms. Will there be some
Karen.
there?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, so if you have any trouble in printing off the forms, just let the lead or one of the other volunteers know when you arrive, and they'll grab some forms for you to fill in then.
Yeah,
Just arrive a little bit earlier for that.
Don't worry too much. They are available on site. Is there, how many people have completed a shift thus far?
Can I just ask, is it starting again in January then? Have you got, or do you know when it's starting again after Christmas?
So we haven't got a schedule at the moment for the first 9 days in January, and that's because Lakeside Darts Championship was meant to be happening. Because of COVID, that's been cancelled. So I can imagine that we're going to see some shifts arising in those first 9 days. There is already a schedule posted for the 2 weeks following that. But the immediate urgency that we had was, of course, Boris saying that we were going to get 36,000 done in Surrey Heath by the end of the year, and we hope to get near to achieving that. Don't expect to achieve it, but and because of that, of course, it will run on into January. And of course, the program was always there and will continue until everybody's triple jabbed, I guess.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody's got my email. So if you do have any questions that you think of afterwards, just ping me an email and we'll, answer them as best we can. Okay. So, but again, I really appreciate you guys all signing up for this. And it's not a difficult task, but your time is really important. And as a community, it's great to see everybody come together on this. So, thank you once again for coming forward.
Thank you.
Take care all and enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.
Bye now.